Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com, and this is episode 25 of Learn Lightroom 5. And in this episode, we're going to continue to look at some of the plugins for Lightroom, and we're going to continue to look at some of the HDR plugins for Lightroom. As you know, in the past, we used Photoshop as a plugin, and we did 16-bit HDR, and we did 32-bit HDR with Photoshop. Today, we're going to use Nik Software's HDR Efex Pro 2 software, and I'm going to use the same set of images that I used in the 16-bit Photoshop HDR Pro, software episode that I did, and this was what we came up with. This really surreal looking, grungy looking, whatever it was that we did with Lightroom and Photoshop. And this was the series of images. It was a series of 7, as you may recall, and this one was 3 steps overexposed, 2 steps overexposed, 1 that was apparently the correct exposure, that was 1 step under, 2 steps under, and 3 steps under. And we're going to start out similarly to how we did it with that 16-bit one that we sent over into Photoshop. I'm going to go to the first one, and I'm just going to do 2 adjustments in Lightroom. And I forego everything until I get to the detail panel. And in the detail panel, I'm going to do some sharpening, and I'm just going to do some of that quick and dirty sharpening I mentioned in that sharpening episode. I think it was episode 5 perhaps. I'm just going to put the amount somewhere in the 70s, and I'm going to go down to the luminance noise reduction and put that somewhere in the 40s. And I'm not going to worry about it. That's all I'm going to do with the detail panel there. Then I'm going to go down to lens corrections, and I'm going to enable profile corrections, and I'm going to remove chromatic aberration, but I don't think there is any, but I'm going to remove it anyway. Okay, I am done with all the adjustments that I'm going to do. Now what I want to do is I want all the rest of the series of photographs to have the same exact adjustments, and you may recall all we got to do is select them all. We click on the first one that's already adjusted, then we go down to the last one in the series and we hold the shift key down and click on it, and it will select all of them. Then over here, this little sync button that's at the bottom of the right hand panel, we just click on that. This dialog box will come up and it'll ask us what we want to sync. Now you could leave all of them checked because all we really did was the 2, but if you want to get fussy about it, you could click this check none, and we're going to do noise reduction, and we're going to do lens corrections, and that's it. Okay, and we're going to synchronize, and it only takes a second, and it synchronized all of them. Now there's a little bit odd thing with my computer, and I found out a couple of my friends experienced the same thing. Strictly as a plugin, HDR Efex Pro 2 does not seem to work. As you may recall, typically all we have to do now is right click on any of these images, we go to edit in, and down here we'd have HDR Pro Efex 2. Now I took it off. The reason why I took it off because I have a lot there as it is, but whenever I would do this and it would act like it was sending it over to Nik Software's HDR Pro Efex 2, Efex Pro 2, whatever it's called. It would send it over there, and then the program would open, but it would never load the images. It would just sit there. So I was thinking that it probably happens to a lot of people, because I know at least 2 other people that it does the same exact thing to. So I'm going to show you how to get around that, and if you have a plugin that doesn't work as a plugin, how you could make it work. So all we want to do is we keep them all selected, and we're going to export them. So you go up to the top and you go to File, Export. Okay, it comes up, as you know, with this dialog box. Now I want to save them to a specific folder. This is just my preference, and I already made a folder on my desktop. I called it Nik HDR, so I wanted to save it to that folder. All right, and I want to. Oh, that's the existing files aren't going to be matter because I don't have any files in that folder. And I'm not going to rename them. I'm going to let them just send them over to that folder. Now the image format, I want it to be TIFF, and I want it to be 16 bits component. That's fine. sRGB is fine. I'm not going to resize the image, so I'm going to unclick that box. The resolution, I want 300 pixels per inch. I'm going to leave that alone. I'm not going to sharpen it. I'm just going to send it out now with that. So to overview, just pick where you want to save it. Pre-make a folder perhaps for it. It might be easier. And you don't have to rename them because we're not saving them in the same folder. We're going to save them in a different folder. And we're going to save them as a TIFF file, 16 bits per component. sRGB color space is fine. And 300 pixels per inch. They're all selected, so it's going to do all of them. So I'll just hit export. And you can see in this box here, it's going to tell us the how it's doing. It's going to just take a few seconds to churn them out. Now once it churns them out, I could close Lightroom down, but it's about half done now. And I notice as it's doing this, the fan kicks on my laptop here, so it must be actually using a lot of computing power to save the TIFF files. And they're 16-bit per component files, so they're relatively large. Okay, the ding tells us we're done. So I am going to close Lightroom down. I'm done with it. Now I have this folder right here, Nik Software, and I could open it, and there are the files right there. So that's fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up HDR Efex Pro 2, which is right here. Bugs me about Nik Software is, I guess, because I got, I'm OCD about some things, is I like it to be big so I could see the picture better. So I always have to do that. It doesn't ever remember the setting. So anyway, we're going to go up to the top here. We're going to go Open Images. It's under File, File, Open Images. And we're going to go to my desktop. And we're going to go to Nik HDR Efex, or HDR. I called it Nik HDR as the folder. I'm going to click on the first one, just like you did in Lightroom, and hold the Shift key down and click on the last one. And we're going to open them into this. Now this will load them in, and it will come up with this initial dialog box. And it's going to ask me if the alignment, if I want to have it aligned. Now I took this shot on a tripod, so I know it's aligned, but I'm going to keep that checked anyway. It doesn't hurt anything. Now ghost reduction, if you take shots outside and there's a little bit of a breeze, definitely click ghost reduction. And then you could tell it how strong you want the ghost reduction to be. 20%, 40, the more strength you apply the ghost reduction, the longer it's going to take to render. So just remember that. So if it's a really breezy day and you have trees and stuff in the shot, you're going to have to put 100% and it's going to take a while. All right. Now chromatic aberration, you could click that. It's not going to hurt anything. It just takes a little longer to render. All right. Like I already did that in Lightroom, but it doesn't hurt. It's not going to hurt anything to have it checked again. And if you do have, as you look at these preview shots, you have, and you could see that there's chromatic aberration. And you typically would see it on a vertical. So like on a tree limb going out. Let's say this was a tree limb, or even this pipe, and you could see there's a little red or purple. It's usually red or purple. They have red cyan and blue and yellow. But you could see a tiny little red or purple line. Then you would slide these sliders back and forth to try to eliminate it. So anyways, that's fine. We're going to leave it as is. We're going to go down to the bottom of here and click this button, Create HDR. Now it's just going to take a second to render. Now by the way, I'm going to mention while it's doing this, I had 7 photographs. That's kind of overkill, really. Typically you could get away with, you could make make HDR with 1 photo, even though it's not technically true HDR, but 2 photos you could do it. Most people use 5, I'd say, and they would use 1 stop between each of the 5. You can use 3, and if you do use 3, use 2 stops. So 2 stop overexposed, 2 stop underexposed, and 1 right in the middle. And that will pretty much cover all your bases, because a camera could see at least 3 stops of light, so you'd be covered. Okay, another little pet peeve I have with Nik Software, at least HDR Efex Pro 2, is the panels always come pre-closed, and that kind of drives me nuts. And to open them, all you got to do though is hit the tab key. So at least they make it easy. Hit the tab key again, it closes them up. So hit the tab key to open those up. All right. Now, it always will come on this first preset, which is called the default, and you could see it's just, all the images merged together, and you could see, the dark area here that was real dark, and you couldn't really see it in any of those 7 photographs that I took. You could see that, and the bright areas aren't blown out. So you could go down. Now all of these are presets. It has them in groups of architecture, artistic, realistic, landscape, surreal. You could go down it's individually, or you could go down the whole group, all of them at once. And that's it. We'll take a look at a few. That's balance. This is deep 1. This is deep 2. This is detailed 1. Detailed 2. If you see something you like, by all means, just use it. You'll save a lot of time. Black and white. Structurized. Is structurized a word? I think they're taking liberties with that. Structurized 2. Now that's more similar to the shot we took out of Photoshop with the 16-bit Photoshop. I don't know, soft colors. Late summer, you could go kind of weird. There's a bunch. I mean, you could go through them all. But what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to the default, which is, really not much here. And we're going to do it by hand. So we could go over what each of these controls do to give you an idea and a feel of what's going on. So typically, too, with Nik software in general, you usually start at the top and work your way down. And we'll start out with tone compression. And tone compression, the best I could describe it, it's kind of like a clarity, it's kind of like a mid-tone sharpness is the best I could put it. But there's 2 sliders involved. You can see now I'll move tonal compression all the way to the right. It takes just a second to render, and you can see it's a definite change, but it's not a dramatic change. Now all the way to the left, you can see tone compression, what it does. Now if you want to put it back in the middle, you could just double click right on the slider. That's similar to Lightroom, and you'll put it back in the middle. Method strength, you could go all the way to the right, and you can see it doesn't really seem to do much. All the way to the left, you can see it's kind of blurred it, kind of like what clarity would do. Put it back in the middle by double clicking it. So what we could do, I'm going to turn tone compression, let's see, we'll just try it each way a little bit, and I'm just going to turn it up a touch, and I'm going to bring the strength up a touch. Okay, now the HDR method, there's kind of like these 4 spots you could go. Right now we're in normal depth. We could go up to here and it's strong. We could go down to, and that's subtle, and then this one is off. So there's no HDR really being applied, at least depth. So let's, for this, I'm not trying to make a picture that's going to hang on a wall. I just want to demonstrate everything. And I get like hate mail. People, HDR brings out the worst in people. Some people love it, and then some people that hate it, they're very vocal about their hate. And personally, I think if it makes you happy, do it, and don't worry about it. And if you don't like it, just don't look at it. Who cares? So anyways, I'm just going to make it strong to demonstrate it, all right? And not because I like it. You guys don't have to send me hate mail, really. Okay, the detail now, and that is, you could see the difference there. See, the best you could look is look at the smaller detail of the grain in the wood and the cobwebs. That is totally grungy at the top, and we'll go all the way down to soft. And you can see you can't see the grain of the wood that much, and I'm going to bring it up one step at a time. They call this realistic. You can see a little more grain. That's called accentuated. We see some more grain. That's called detailed. Now we're kind of really overdoing the grain. And then we see grungy, and the whole scene is grungy, really. So I'm going to back that one off one, just to bring that at detail, just to say that I did. Now the drama, I love that word drama for this. We're just going to jump all the way top to give you an idea. See, now that's just adding a kind of a finer realism to it, I guess, than what the detail did. I think the detail was a little coarser, and this is adding a little more fine adjustment to it. As you can see, it's not doing as much from step to step. So you got to just play around and just move these little buttons around. And I'm going to leave it on grainy and to see what you like. Okay, so we're done with the HDR method in the tone compression panel. And we're going to go to the tonality panel now. I'm going to close that one down. Tonality is just really kind of brightness throughout the whole thing. And I kind of like what it is, so I'm going to leave that alone. If you wanted to bring some of the shadows out a little more, I remember I did that with the one that we did, the 16-bit one we did in Photoshop. I made the shadows a little brighter. You can see how it's making the shadows a little brighter. So just a little bit. I'll bring those up just a little bit, just to say I did. If I want to bring the highlights down a little bit, just a little, because it seemed like it was a little bright in here, didn't it? All right, so we'll bring that down. Now, the next is the contrast, and that is just typical contrast, like you would find in Lightroom. So we're going to bring we're making it look really grungy anyway. Bring the contrast up some more. We could just now control the contrast too in the blacks and whites separately. So we could add more contrast, less contrast in the blacks. I'm going to leave those alone. Structure is kind of like sharpening, kind of. I mean, you'll see as I turn it up, you can see it kind of makes the brighter parts brighter and the darker parts darker, which adds a really fine mid-tone contrast to the photo, which is technically what clarity does in Lightroom. So we'll just move it around. It's subtle though, and it does take a second to render. So we'll just turn that up just a little. All right, so we're done with the tonality panel. Now we'll go to the color panel, and this is where you could, turn saturation way up, or bring it down, make it black and white if you want, and we'll just leave it alone. Gonna leave that in the middle. Color temp, if you want it, really cool, go to the left. If you want it really warm, go to the right. Obviously, the extremes are kind of, almost hard to look at. So anyways, I'm going to leave that in the middle. You know what? Maybe I'll just warm it up just a touch. Okay, right there. And tint is the same thing. It's just like Lightroom. You could change the tint if you wanted to. Make it more green, make it more blue, purple that way. I'm going to leave that more in the middle. So we're done with color. Selective adjustments, these are control points if you're familiar with Nik software. The control points are very powerful, and they're actually very easy to use. At first they may be a little intimidating. And what you would do is you would just click on it, and it's activated, and you can see when I go over the picture my cursor turns into a circle with a plus sign in it. So I'm going to put one right here, right on the middle of this bin. I guess it's a bin, and the first slider is going to control the size, and you can see that circle that it's making. I want to just affect whatever I'm doing on this bin. All right, so I'm going to go kind of right over there, and the second slider, the one right below the top one, is exposure. So you can make this brighter or darker, and see how it's only doing that where the circle was. Okay, you double click it, it goes back where it was. The next one is contrast. We could make more or less contrast. Okay, I'm going to leave that one alone. The next one is saturation, and I'm going to turn saturation all the way down. So I'm going to make this bin black and white basically. Now, structure, as I mentioned before, that's kind of like clarity. So we're just going to, we could turn it down, make it soft, make it hard. This whole picture is really kind of like overdone. Obviously, it's like super overdone HDR. And again, I'm doing that just to demonstrate the sliders. You guys don't have to send me hate mail and tell me how terrible I am at HDR, really. Obviously, you guys could tell I got a lot of mail. Okay, so this one, as far as I'm concerned, is done. Now, an easy way, if you want to just copy this instead of getting new ones all the time, you could just hold your Alt key down, or Option key, if you have a Mac, Alt on a PC, and then just click on this, and you could drag one over here. And now you see we have two. There's one there, there's this one, and there's this one. And the settings are identical. Okay? What we're going to do on this one, though, is we'll make it a little smaller. Okay? Now that we want to copy it again and bring it over to this bin, I'll hold the Alt or Option key down and drag one over there. So this makes it real fast if you want to do different settings for different things in the picture, you could just hold that Alt or Option key down and just dragging these control points throughout the photograph, and it'll help you. It just makes the day go faster. So then you have your control points here, your individual ones. If you click this button here, you duplicate it also, but it's a lot easier to hit the Alt or Option key. And if you don't like a control point, just highlight it or have it active by clicking on it, and then you can hit this garbage can icon and it will delete it. Alright, so we're done with control points. Now the finishing touches, we could add a vignette, and it has these preset vignettes, it's called. There's Lens 2, Lens 3, and those are real subtle. Hopefully you could see those in the photograph. It's darkening the edges and darkening the middle just slightly. And then you have these black frames. Then you have white frame. If you wanted a white frame, you could see the white frames a little better. I kind of liked Lens 3. So we're going to go to Lens 3. Okay. You could graduated neutral density if you wanted. Now this would be more applicable if you were doing a landscape, and you could see how it's making, as I went to the right, it's making the top lighter than the bottom. It's a graduated neutral density filter. If I go the other way to the left, it's reversing it, so the top is darker than the bottom. This comes in, as I mentioned, really handy if you are doing landscape photography and you want to darken the sky a little bit. You would do these sliders for the graduated neutral density. And again, lower tonality just affects the picture in the opposite way. So what that means is when I went this way on this one, it made the top dark and the bottom light. So basically it made the top dark. Okay. When I went this way, it made the top light. Okay. This one, when I go this way, it makes the bottom dark. When I go that way, it makes the bottom light. So it's kind of nice. You could kind of really dial in a graduated filter between those two sliders alone of where you want it to be. Now in this shot, because it's not a landscape, I'm not going to have it on there. But let's just, for the sake of argument, put it on, because I want to show you the next sliders. So I have the upper tonality darker and the bottom tonality lighter. This blend slider, it says where you blend them together. As you move to the right, the bottom moves up. As you move to the left, it's not really that the bottom moves up, it just gets blended a little, favoring the lighter pixels at the bottom. And this one, the darker pixels get favored as it blends. Right in the middle, they're equally blended. The vertical shift is where it kind of moves it up and down. As you can see, as I move to the right, it moved the bottom graduated light filter up. And then, of course, if I move it to the left, the dark one that's at the top gets moved down. So that's to give you an idea. And rotation, if you have a weird circumstance where you have something that's not level and you want to tilt the vignette, as you go to the left, you're tilting it counterclockwise, and as you go to the right, you're going to be tilting it clockwise. Okay, so I'm just going to reset these by double clicking on all of them, and they're back in the middle. And because, as I mentioned, I don't really have any reason to put a graduated filter on this image, and like I mentioned, if you're doing, it comes in really handy with landscape photography, though. And that's it. That's everything you need to know with HDR Efex Pro 2. When you're ready and you have it the way you like it, if you like what you did, I would suggest you save it as a preset. And what you would do is you would go to Custom down here and hit this plus sign. And right here, you could type in what it was, Tony's Crazy HDR. and hit OK. Now what that will do is it'll be a custom preset, so you could now dial, instead of going through all these sliders again and hope you get it right, you just go right here and you could just click it right away. And that's all you have to do, and you'll be right there. We go back to our preset library, and if I go up to the top and I click on that, see how it's right back where we started? I could go down now to my right here, custom, and I could just click on that, and we're right back to what we just did. So that's, as I mentioned, HDR Efex Pro 2. And when you're done, you could save it by clicking this bottom right hand button here, and it will save it into the folder in which everything. And 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it isn't. I don't know. Oh, there it is, right there. It saved it right there for some reason. I'm not really sure why. So it saved it in my root directory. I'm not really sure why it did that. That's that. You know, so you might have to look for it. But unfortunately, it, you know, in my case, it doesn't work as a strict plugin for Lightroom, which is kind of annoying. But there's the shot there now. We'll open it, and there it is. Okay, so that's it. I really appreciate everyone watching. And as I mentioned, we're going to, in a future episode, continue doing plugins for Lightroom. And the next one I'll be doing is another HDR one, which is Photomatics Pro, which is actually the most popular HDR plugin for Lightroom, in my opinion. More pros that I know use Photomatics than any other program. So I'll be doing that one next. If you guys are interested in learning about HDR, I suggest you go over to Trey Ratcliffe's website. I think it's called stuckincustoms.com. Trey is a tremendous photographer, and he has a lot of resources over there, like ebooks and videos and stuff he's selling on HDR, and you can learn from him a lot. So you know, check out Trey's stuff. It's excellent. Currently I am writing an ebook for landscape photography, and my plans is my second ebook will be on HDR photography. So maybe in the future you could check out my stuff too. I'd appreciate it. So again, thank you everyone for watching, and I'd like to thank everyone that has subscribed to my channels on YouTube. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be talking to you guys soon.